This episode of Bright Hearth is brought to you by Garlands of Grace and our supporters at patreon.com. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. Profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Proverbs 27:6.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bright Hearth. This is a part 2, but before we get in there, how you doing, babe?
Good.
You doing good? What's your
Yes.
posture right now, would you say?
We haven't recorded at night in a while.
It's true.
I also haven't skipped everyone's nap time and gone to the hot springs since the summer, and I'm very tired.
So you've been hot-soaked and kept up late. Not a good combo. Not a good combo for pregnant Americans, is it?
No. And I sat in a lithium pool. Liquid.
Dang.
Magnesium, lithium, so
You're magnesiumed up.
super relaxed.
You're almost like a battery that could be
This
put in
could
a
get
Tesla.
really interesting.
Yeah. Well, last week, babe, I think we made some friends. We told people that they were not attractive and all kinds of
No,
other
we didn't.
insulting
Don't say
things.
it like
I'm
that.
just
We gave
kidding.
them plenty of hope.
I'm just kidding. Well, I hope you were not offended too strongly and that the advice that we gave last week was helpful. That was the part 1 of the field guide to finding a spouse. This is our second and final part there. And really, we're picking up. We intended for that to be one episode, but then we realized as we got through the first question to ask yourself that it was just going to take like 2 hours to get through. So ain't nobody got time for that. We have a few more questions to for you to ask yourself. And before we do that, let me just remind you of these asterisks that we made last time. We're not trying to give you an insurmountable list. As always, married people are going to be working on these things for the rest of their life as well. So don't think we're saying, unless you are essentially a 10 out of 10 in every conceivable category of masculinity or femininity, that you are basically beyond hope and no one will ever love you. That's not what we're saying.
No.
Definitely not.
No.
We are not subtweeting anybody locally that we know. Just to reiterate, not subtweeting anybody. This isn't like our attempt to tell somebody that we know here in Utah stuff that we were too cowardly to tell to their face. Definitely not. Lastly, this is just us trying to be a friend to you, someone who loves you enough to give you hard questions to ask, and that's why we opened with that proverb that faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy. Whenever somebody's coming alongside and saying, hey, here's some ways that you can take responsibility for yourself, trusting in the providence of God, understanding that you're not God, but essentially encouraging you, here's all that you can be doing to take responsibility. Carpe diem, seize the day. And what can sometimes happen is that people can hear that as like an attack. Like, how dare you tell me that? No. We're actually just trying to help you take what's helpful. And so we have a couple more questions to ask, and we'll jump right in unless you have any other thoughts before we do that, babe.
Nope.
All right. So the first question that we have for you is along the lines of the question we discussed last week, but kind of turned outward. Now is, have you asked a trusted friend to give you a brutally honest assessment of yourself? Last week, we encouraged you to ask this, or to do a brutally honest assessment of yourself where you're working through and saying, like, how am I doing on these basic categories of things like conversational ability, spiritual maturity, Christian fruitfulness, war with sin, finances, career? Is there something that is holding me back from attracting a mate? Is there something that's, am I like so overbearing in conversation, nobody else can get a word in edgewise, and they're like, ooh, red flag, I'm out of there? Am I so quiet that people never have an opportunity to talk with me? Do I care for my appearance? Am I making sure that I'm, as a man, looking masculine and clean and in shape? If I'm a lady, am I making sure that I'm looking feminine and, taking care of myself and in shape? And all of these things that are within your scope of responsibility. Again, not turning yourself into a model in either direction, because that was the Lord. He sprinkled as much handsomeness or beauty into your mixing bowl as he decided, and it was for his glory. That if he made you a 7 out of 10, be a 7 out of 10 to the glory of God. If you, some of us, I wish I could be a 7. That'd be wonderful if I could hit that if I jump high enough, sometimes I can hit the 7 out of 10 mark. Right, babe?
Whatever.
I'm just fishing here.
10 out of 10.
I was just hoping you'd call me handsome. This is Bright Hearth. I basically record this podcast just to fish for compliments from my wife.
Okay. That means I'm not doing something
I'm
right if we have to record an episode
I'm
for you to get a compliment.
To get my wife to call me handsome, I have to record a podcast. I'm just kidding. It's not true. She calls me handsome all the time, you guys. Anyway, if I can recall what we're actually talking about, I believe what I was going to say is that now we're telling you, okay, you can do that for yourself, and that's good to try and step out of yourself and get some objectivity within my responsibility. How am I doing? Am I taking charge of what's in my control? But it's very helpful. It's very helpful to ask a trusted friend to help you in that and to give them permission. Say, look, hurt my feelings a little.
Yeah, I think it's good too to do this after you've done your own personal inventory, because then you can kind of say, it can be awkward for somebody in that position to like then give critique. So you could start the conversation by saying, look, these are the areas I feel like I should be working on. Is there a blind spot though? Is there something else you see? So you're not just telling them, have at me like a punching bag, basically.
Right. And probably ask a friend of the same sex.
Yeah.
Don't ask all your... Yeah, go ahead.
Or we have single friends that come to both of us as married couples. So
sure.
I think that also can be helpful, because you could I could talk to a single guy saying like, this is how a woman might perceive the way you're acting in a way that you might not pick up on as another man. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you might do the same for a lady.
So maybe ask a married couple.
Yes,
that you
correct.
trust.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely also have somebody that you're close to.
Yeah, just who knows you the best? Who's in your life? What friends you? And if there's nobody, you need it. Like that's a priority. Like
yeah, that's true.
Be making friends. Be in the church. Get life contact with people.
I think too, something that single people feel weird about is like, well, if it feels awkward to cultivate friends that are married or like with kids, but we could just as easily say the same thing about single people, and we don't let that stop us. So like this has to be a two-way street in some ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think that's just an overcorrection from, Gospel Coalition, like involve singles and everything. It's like, yeah. But they also, and I think our people at Refuge are great at this.
Absolutely.
I literally can't think of anyone who's not. They're all very welcoming to children and families, and they come to events and all that stuff. But in the past, I have definitely seen that, like, they want to segregate themselves in some ways.
Yeah, what they want is like, instead of let me get involved in the life of a family who has like kids in tow, doesn't have all the freedom of a single person. And sometimes like there's a culture in the church of like, well, invite the single people in, but by that, sometimes the single people can get an entitlement complex where they're like, where's the event for me?
Yes. Why? We don't have that. And if I would see that at Refuge, I'd squash that.
Right. Like, why don't any of the other ladies like want to get coffee with me, like one-on-one at all time? Well, they have kids. Like, go involve yourself. Go say, hey, can I help out with dinner some night? Can I trust me? You're friends with kids. They'll be like, yes, you can help. And then you're going to be friends. You're going to talk. And you get to know one another. And that is how you get involved in the life of our church has a lot of young children.
Yeah.
So this is just the stage of many of us.
Even the older ladies at our church, even they get involved in like young families' lives and are very much grandmotherly. And so. Yeah,
that's a great, just practice that you can be taking up is getting involved along these lines as well. It's not just about asking a trusted friend to do a brutally honest assessment of you. It's also like learning. So maybe in your self-assessment, you realize, okay, I'm a lady. I am not super, maybe my mom wasn't super feminine, or I just didn't have a lot of examples. And so I'm just really comfortable in like athletic attire and a ponytail,
sweatpants.
And that's just, I'm comfortable there. That's my comfort zone. I feel confident, like not confident, but like that's me. And you feel like you'd be faking it to all of a sudden do what we said last week and like put a dress on and like, pay attention to your hair, things like that. Well, go find some feminine ladies in the church that you trust, some friends, and say, hey, will you help me find a couple dresses that I can feel good in and help me figure this out? And like, don't be embarrassed. I guarantee you your friends won't like laugh at you.
No,
and
no,
make
not
fun
at
of
all.
you.
No.
Because we get it. Not all of us had like this.
Well, and I already said this last episode, I think, if you're looking to a lady that has children or an older lady who just looks feminine and happy, I bet you she's had to do a lot of thought and work to get to that place because she's been through different seasons of life that don't make it easy to naturally be feminine.
Absolutely. And the same could be said of other aspects that we've talked about, like conversation. Let's say you realize that you're just kind of awkward and you feel like every time you try to make small talk, it's like dying. You feel like you're about like you are being killed, and you're being killed of embarrassment. Okay, go find some friends who know how to converse and ask them to teach you. I mean, it's really, these are skills. Most of these things are skills. They're not like you either get them by divine fiat at birth. They're bestowed upon you. Yeah, there's personalities. But you can learn. Like, you can learn how to converse. You can learn. If you're a guy, if you're one of these young guys and you're really weird, and like you've asked people and for a brutally honest assessment, like, well, okay, my brother, like, love you. You're kind of weird. And I hope you have friends who will tell you that if you are.
You know who has a really good episode about this for guys is Michael Foster.
Really? Is it on It's Good to Be a Man? Michael, I know you don't listen to this podcast. Does he do that one
on his own? Or does he do that with none?
I'm going to be honest. As Michael has told me, Brian, I love you, but I've never listened to your podcast. I've told him, Michael, that's okay, I love you, and I've never listened to your podcast either.
I know he addresses this in a lot of places, but I have heard him talk about it because he talked about a friend of his that I think he even said, he was like, I got a really gay haircut when I was, I was younger, like a teenager. And he had a friend who finally pulled him aside and was like, dude,
you look gay.
You cannot wear your hair like that anymore. And he said it was so helpful because he was in an awkward stage and he didn't know what to do, but it immediately snapped him out of it. Mm-hmm. And I know he addresses this in so many other places for young guys, but Michael is definitely Michael Foster, a good resource for this. So
young men, if you really are just struggling with this, or you're worried that you're like, I don't know if I'm weird and socially awkward, but maybe I am. There's a lot of great resources there. Ask some friends, just, hey, and this might make you feel weirder at first. Be like, hey, I think I'm a little socially awkward. Can you help me out?
And I don't know if I can describe this correctly, but I've been reading Jane Austen's books, and I've been thinking about how much of a social mantle of responsibility the older classes used to take matchmaking upon themselves as a job, a duty that they had. A duty, yeah. Mm-hmm. So some of this, it might feel weird, like either seeking out help. I've had people out of state ask, like, is it not trusting the hand of the Lord if I move somewhere where there's more single people? It's actually really unusual that our parents just kind of like push us out the door and don't give us tons of training on dating anymore. Yeah. Or conversation, or if we come from unbelieving homes, they probably gave us bad advice.
Yeah, like, hey, just get them in bed.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Make sure what do they say? I have a friend that her mom told her, like,
drive it before you buy it.
That.
Yeah. You wouldn't buy a car without driving it first.
So
a woman is not a vehicle. Okay, she is a human being. She
all
is
that
not a
to
vehicle.
Be said, there used to be more involvement from the older generations helping us figure a lot of this out. But we don't really have that now. And I don't think single people need to feel bad about trying to figure this out with help from others.
No, not at all. This should be a normal part of life.
Yeah.
It's just a normal part of life. Like being born, raising kids, having, getting married, finding a spouse, getting educated, getting a job. These are all normal life things. And in the model that the Lord, I believe, intends for us to follow is for there to be intergenerational cooperation in the household of households of the church. This should be normal. Should be normal.
Yeah.
This episode of Bright Hearth is sponsored by Garlands of Grace, which is a wonderful Christian company that offers a variety of very versatile head coverings, head wraps, and headbands for sale for women and girls. They're very versatile. Whether you're head covering for 1 Corinthians 11 reasons or just looking for a pretty and feminine head covering, they've got you covered. Babe, why do we like Garlands of Grace?
I really liked Garlands of Grace because when I was first trying to recover this call to head cover, I didn't necessarily want something that was super trendy and that everyone else was doing. And I found their pieces really feminine and timeless in a way that just a lot of other coverings that you could pick up at Target or on Amazon just weren't. And they are very quality. And if you are a mom trying to cover in a pew with wiggly children, you know how hard it is to actually keep a head covering on.
Yes.
And I really like their volumizer bands that are velvet and they stick to your head, and I have had no issues with them. So yeah, I really like them, and they're a sister-owned company.
Yeah, Christian-owned, sister-owned, and they're all made in the USA. So a great company to support. We would commend you, husbands, if you're listening. Go check this out as a thoughtful gift for your wife, for your daughters. They have head wraps for ladies as well as little girls, and they've got a whole lot of different styles, a lot of different beautiful colors, and really great quality company. So we're glad to have them as a sponsor for this episode of Bright Hearth, and you can support us by supporting them. So head over to garlandsofgrace.com. You can use the link in the description of this episode, and we hope that you'll give them your support.
And that being the case, I do want to make a comment here too, is like, I know it's really hard for people to believe this who aren't married and haven't been married for a long period of time, but there really is more. There is more than physical attraction. So if your local covenant body is really highlighting somebody to you multiple times from multiple arenas, don't just X them out immediately because of a secondary or tertiary.
They weren't tall enough.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Because I see that in a lot of places where, and I've had multiple married people confirm the same thing, like, man, I wish they would understand that within a number of years, that's not going to matter at all.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
And it's that verse about like, beauty is deceitful, but charm. I mean,
yeah, charm
is deceitful.
Beauty is vain.
Yes.
But how does it end?
But the hidden person of the heart is very precious in the sight of the Lord, I think.
Yeah, it's basically saying that a virtuous, godly person is going to be much more pleasant to be married to.
Correct.
I mean, like word on the street, versus a hot. Like, look at this. Look at this. Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen.
I don't know.
Okay, Tom Brady, known.
I thought you were going to say Tom Cruise because we did meet recently.
Known basketball player, quarterback.
Okay,
I'm just kidding.
joking.
I'm not dumb. Tom Brady, quarterback, probably the GOAT, in my opinion. Married to a supermodel. And she leaves him.
She did?
Yeah, she left him.
Oh my gosh.
Like hundreds of millions of dollars.
That wasn't even that long ago.
He's hot,
then.
supposedly,
Oh,
I
man.
hear from other people. As a man, I can evaluate that he is like a chiseled Roman,
How old is he?
God. Look at the guy. I
Is
mean,
he like
he's
Tom,
like
Tom
95.
Cruise's name? Tom
Cruise's name.
Tom
No, him and Tom
Cruise's
Cruise are exactly the same though, because they're both
they're
these
just,
guys
like,
are just like
different
they
fields of work.
literally don't age. They both get handsomer by the year.
I could not believe
I don't
Tom
understand
Cruise was
it.
60 when I looked.
We got the VidAngel thing where you can like filter out all the potty words. So we watched Top Gun Maverick, and it was like, the man is 60.
I
He's
couldn't
getting
believe- I was
handsomer by
thinking
the moment.
55
Like,
tops.
as we speak right now, he's
getting
already
by
handsomer.
the moment.
He's already
That's
handsomer
funny.
than he was when he made that movie.
Yeah,
Imagine what Mission Impossible
I'm sure there's
17
lots
is
of
going to be.
conspiracies out there as to why I can think of
Oh,
like two off
here
the
we
top of my head.
go.
I
I've
won't bring
heard
them up
many.
though. I won't bring them up.
That's for in the kitchen. That's for the Patreon episodes. That's where we talk about our conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Behind the paywall. That's right. Yeah, anyway, I mean, like, it's a good example where, and I don't know who's at fault. I really don't know the situation, but she leaves him, and you go,
Crazy.
apparently just being hot isn't
enough. Yeah.
So, yeah, if you have multiple people in the church saying, hey, you two would probably hit it off. And you're like, the conversation was hard for the first time that we went out for coffee. Well, yeah, it's always hard.
Or there's just something, because I was thinking, there's just like something about the physical appearance.
Mhm.
Like, obviously
His
you
Adam's
want there to
apple's
be
too
attraction,
pronounced.
but,
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is actually
the mustache debatable.
Let's talk about
Is
this.
the height debatable? Like
This
all
is
that
a question.
stuff.
This is a question that I have written down. I want people to ask themselves. Field guide to finding a spouse. You need to ask, am I being reasonable about myself and my list of demands? Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Let's say that you objectively look in the mirror and you're like, look, I'm a 6.5. That's fine. And I embrace it. The Lord made me a 6.5. And I'm going to do everything I can, but I'm never going to be Tom Cruise. Look, join the club. We're never going to be immortal. people who get handsomer until we're like 300 years old. We're not Numenorians, okay? We're not Aragorn. Listen, is your standard for a spouse basically a model who is like the perfect proportion, the Fibonacci sequence on their face?
Well, the Christian version of it is like worship leader, youth pastor. That
you got to be a pastor.
Yeah, it's got to be.
Which, by the way, we're not easy to be married to. Just ask Lexi.
What did you say?
I said we're not easy to be married to. Pastors. No, so you just, and I know I'm exaggerating, but it is true. Sometimes people are held back because they have unreasonable demands. You think, okay, Michael Foster again, like this is basically the Michael Foster show at this point, but he had a post not too long ago where he was talking about just the sheer statistics. There was a website where you could filter and say, show me only how many people there are in America who are this age to this age and this sex. So it's a woman from this age to this age, and then that is this, not morbidly obese and blah, going through the list, and it like narrows down the pool. And he was just visualizing for people, this is the total pool of people who are marriageable in your area.
Was this a dating?
It was just a demographic site.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you could also look for like how many old left-handed men there were or something, I suppose, if you were looking for that sort of thing. But the point was, there's a finite pool of human beings, and we are always prone as people to overestimate ourselves and underestimate others, and to think more highly of ourselves than we ought. And so sometimes we can tend to magnify the flaws of everybody we see. Mm-hmm. And some of us out of nervousness or like not wanting to commit to that person or being genuinely scared.
Yeah.
And then minimize our own flaws. And I know some people are really anxious and they magnify their own flaws too. So I understand that. But
that's true. That's a good point. I didn't think about it that way.
But we need to ask, am I being reasonable?
Yeah. I think first of all, we don't want to like play into the whole soulmate thing, because then what happens when you wake up one day and you just don't feel like they're your soulmate anymore? Day. When I realized the importance of this, actually was reading When Fathers Ruled. I don't remember. Osmart? I feel like the author is Osmart.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the author.
It's a red cover with like white people on it. But I think that's where this came from. Shoot, I hope it is. Anyways.
It's okay.
Reformers, it was really common for like the reformers in that time period. They understood so much the importance of like the family being the backbone of civilization, essentially, in Christianity, populating the household of God, that it was totally normal if a reformer was on their deathbed to like matchmake for their current spouse. Okay. Wow. So to me, it was because that couple, that strong Reformation couple, understood I really am better off with somebody else who has an aligned vision with Christ than like going off on my own, doing my own thing, kind of economically there were differences. Mm-hmm. They needed spouses. We need spouses now, but we can be more independent. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, sure.
They understood that. And it was kind of like, man, I wonder how many people could be married by next week if they took that approach to things. Yeah. Like who simply is a godly Christian and they can fulfill the duties of the covenant, and, they're not half bad. There's a few things I don't like. Okay, whatever.
We could figure it out.
Yeah, we can figure it out. I think a lot more people would be married.
Yeah,
I think aren't right now if they're taking that approach over the soulmate approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like, hey, you're a Christian man, I'm a Christian woman. You're, not in gross unrepentant sin. You're not wildly foolish. Like can we make this work? And I know some single people right now are like,
easy for you to say.
Easy for you to say. You already found your soulmate. And yes, I know. I know, listeners. Like, I locked her down in junior high, okay? And I did it because I knew she was going to be a hot commodity. I knew there was going to be competition through the youth group as we went there, and the pizza nights, and there was going to be the bus to the camp, the Christian camp, and all the guys were going to be trying to play Goo Goo Dolls songs for her on the acoustic guitar, and I was the one who was going to play the Goo Goo Dolls song
no one
and
else
win
played
her
the
heart.
Guitar in our youth group. So
oh yes, I remember one who did.
Who?
Multiple. See, this is the
Okay,
thing.
I don't
These
remember.
ladies are
I only
unaware.
had eyes for you.
They're
I don't
unaware of the sharks that were circling, and I was the naval captain who sailed my ship in, pulled her out of the water, rescued her from the sharks with Goo Goo Dolls songs on the guitar and Switchfoot. I played a lot of Switchfoot for her too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
I don't even know what we're talking about at this point.
You were saying there's single people out there who are saying easy for you to say.
Oh yeah. They're saying easy for you to say. I was like, no. I had to fight off the sharks too. You know, just here. This is the reality. But you got to ask, like, am I being reasonable about my list of demands, my expectations? Am I simply fearful? Anytime I see something that I don't like, am I using that as an automatic excuse to push someone at harm's length?
I think we could very easily have said that as a young married or engaged couple, having unreasonable expectations for marriage, even like X amount in your savings, X kind of car, X kind of career, X kind of debt or lack thereof. We could have done that, but we decided not to. That's part of our stories. We decided not to put those stipulations.
For example, someone could have said, like, Lexy, you shouldn't marry a man who makes $700 a month in his part-time worship leading gig and $8.25 an hour at the coffee shop for the rest of the week. And listen, valid point.
But
yet,
here's the thing: is
here
like,
we are.
Because I knew you had a good work ethic. You had full-time jobs in high school.
Yeah.
There were other this is proving my point. You're proving my point even more. There were character qualities there that I knew I could bank on
For future development.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't thinking in terms of like, he's a deadbeat because he works at a coffee shop. I was thinking he has faithfully had jobs, and now one of them is at the coffee shop.
And the chemistry was electric. So, I mean, okay, anyway, now I'm just, like, I'm so distracted just thinking about.
Keep moving on.
We're going to move on. This is the last question that I'd like you to ask yourself. And it's simply, am I being proactive? And have I thought creatively about what it might mean to be proactive? Am I being proactive, and have I thought creatively and thoroughly and systematically and didactically and terrifically about what it means to be proactive? Like, have I put all the cards on the table? Have I thought through all the options? And it's like, nope. Have you limited yourself? And it's like, unless there's a young man in my congregation right now between this age, well, sometimes there's just not. Sometimes there's not in either direction, a man or a woman. And so you have to think, how can I be contacting other pastors? Can I be going on trips to conferences? Can I be, figuring out some locations where the demographics are more favorable? Can I be asking family? Can I be asking, like, how can I put it out on social media? Can I use the online?
Okay, so I don't think it's weird at all if I saw a godly single lady putting out on social media on her own, hey, I'm single and I'd love to be married.
Yeah.
Here's some things about me, not even using a dating site.
Yeah.
I do not think that's weird at all.
Look,
at all.
Here's who I am. This is the things I like. These are my theological identity.
Yeah.
This is how old I am. I'm not in debt. Whatever. I'm not a feminist. Here's a picture of me in a dress holding a plate of bacon that I made. You guys remember the bacon test?
Yeah.
Right. But I'm being serious. Like, have you baked the pie and given it to the single guy? Have you? These are things that you might say, well, that's too much. Like, that's over the top. That's embarrassing. Listen, in the words of Brian Sauvé, shoot your shot. Shoot your shot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to shoot your shot. And the thing about shooting your shot is, in the words of Michael Scott, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Okay.
I feel like this is the strangest episode of Bright Hearth of all time. And I just accidentally unplugged my headphones. 1 second. No, but there is serious help there, and I know I'm being jocular, and this is serious. Maybe you're like, stop laughing at my situation. I'm really not. But you have to kind of get out of your own head a little bit and just embrace that this is an awkward, difficult thing in a time that's particularly awkward and difficult to find a spouse in.
And I was also going to say, I think it's important for single people to realize that it's not, as a married person, it's not awkward, but we are also one of the first few generations having to figure this out. So we don't, even though we're offering advice, we don't have it all figured out either for what the solution is for you guys. So I think it's also important for single people to seek out help, but also be patient in understanding we're trying to figure this out alongside of you guys, and we do want you guys to be fruitful in marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. We do. And so, Lexi, when you're thinking about creative proactivity, what are some things that come to mind?
Well, that social media one was something I thought about recently. I was like, because I do have a lot of single girlfriends that don't like the idea of dating online, which I 100% understand.
Yeah, I understand that.
But then it dawned on me, I was like, well, why not just post about it yourself? Like, that's not weird, especially if you have like a pastor helping you or something.
Yeah.
I think also, I know we have a single gal at our church that's really good at just inviting groups of singles over regularly with families. And I'm sure that's helped her get to know a lot of the single guys, in the area. So like, how can you just be a hub of hospitality in such a way that you're not having to get to know people one-on-one, but you're getting to know a lot of single people on a regular basis in a context that's less awkward. So in some ways I'm like, well, she created that context for herself. She didn't wait for somebody to go do that.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think about singles ministries.
Singles ministries, I mean, they can be good or bad.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can perpetuate drama adolescence.
Yeah.
They can be problematic.
Yeah, I'm
in that
not
way.
sure what I think.
But some people might be calling like a singles ministry, like putting on a social.
Yeah. So that was the other thing I was going to say is maybe you as a single man or woman could contact a couple of the solid pastors in the area that like, I'd be happy marrying somebody from his church. And say like, hey, I want to organize an event. I want to organize a spring fling or a fall ball or I keep trying to figure out how to do speed dating without being weird.
You know what we should do?
What?
I might edit this out later or keep it in, but this is just me having an idea right now.
Okay.
We should do a Bright Hearth conference at a central location in the United States of America where it's singles invited, and the goal is we get people married off. Great idea or greatest idea?
I just don't know.
We'll think about it, listeners.
Okay. See,
let us know what you think.
Literally, I am thinking about this all of the time. I literally feel like I am constantly like trying to problem solve. I don't have many answers. So
well, here's why I say that. And I don't know if we'll actually end up doing anything like that, whatever. But one of the things about being proactive, and I mentioned like finding out a place where the type of mate that you're looking for is, and reasonably, like it's reasonable to say, I want a mate who's theologically aligned with me. And
that is reasonable.
And not all the way down to your weirdest tertiary issue. But but if you're being reasonable about that, like, look, I would want to be married to someone who shares my conviction on baptism and on, who's brought like reformed. That's reasonable. Okay. So now let's say that you're looking for that kind of spouse. You have that person identified. Okay, now ask yourself, what kind of tree does that fruit grow on?
Yeah.
What kind of tree? What kind of community? What kind of church? All right, now go figure out where those people all get together, right? And get involved in it. Is there a social media niche that you can enter by, following the right people, commenting on their posts? Because there are social media niches that capture theological groups. So you start commenting.
Yeah, we know
being
multiple
proactive.
single people that have gotten married just by being
Via
active
social media.
on Twitter. Yeah.
So, start tweeting in those groups and meeting people in those groups and commenting online and getting involved, and then maybe put that post out, and then maybe find out where the conferences are that people go.
Yeah.
And then maybe show up there before saying, hey, are there any single people that are going to be at this conference? I'd love to, get lunch in a public place, or just, say hi, and like go to the places where the trees are, where that fruit grows. And don't just wait for that fruit to randomly walk through and join and be a member of your church.
So what I was going to say is we learned about a pastor in the area recently who also has a good group of single people at their church.
Yeah.
And he had said we should get them together somehow. And it had never dawned on me, why don't we talk to the other pastors in the area?
Yeah.
But I think that can be another good way too of like, especially a single guy, like we have a single guy that does a lot of single events at Refuge. I think that's like great for a guy to take initiative and do that,
Yeah, absolutely. These are all under the category of proactivity, and they're going to be different for you, different for your situation, different for the type of person that you're like, I'm in this theological category, and that's really important to me, and I have conviction there. I want to raise children with someone in that. Well, find out the tree where that grows and go show up there. And it's really, I mean, like, we overcomplicate this, but it's like your chances go up the more opportunities you give yourself in terms of the statistics. So if you're like here in Utah, where we are, it's a very difficult area. And so we have, we have to do things a little bit creatively to try and find folks. But one of the things that we're hoping to continue to see happen is that we would have friendly connections with multiple communities across the country, which we do. We have friendly connections with people in Moscow, Idaho. We have friendly connections with people out in Illinois and Kentucky, and we have friendly connections with people in Missouri, and I have no doubt in Colorado, and I'm actually realizing there's a lot of them, and Texas. Like there are these groups that we have established diplomatic relationships with, if you will, and that means that there could be exchange. There's friendship. There's knowledge of one another. There's some of the barriers are removed where I know them generally, they know us generally, the kind of people we are theologically and culturally, that we have, these views on education and these views on doctrine and these views on, I mean, all the way down the line, so that when the time comes, like for my own children, when they become marriageable age, and we have lots of people that hopefully will be around and in their age too, but that's just another layer that is there. And you can do that even just yourself. Yeah. You can establish those kinds of relationships through social media, through conferences, but it is going to cost you, and it's going to take proactivity. You're going to have to get out of your bubble. You're going to have to stop making excuses, stop hunkering down every night and going home alone and just doing your thing and going on autopilot. It's hard to find a spouse in this environment on autopilot who's going to be aligned.
Yeah.
Anything else you can think of on being creative, being proactive, or just in general being involving the community and helping our listeners think through this issue?
We did have someone send in. She was a gal that sent in like essentially her wifely resume. I think I don't know. I didn't see it to the church, and I was like, wow. Go her.
Go her, seriously.
Like, who are the pastors that you admire across the country? How can you get in touch and just say, hey, I know you guys don't know me. Here's a reference from my pastor.
Yeah.
This is who I am. That sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Like, we should absolutely be doing that.
Yeah. And
the last thing that I'll ask you to close out this episode.
So if we get a bunch of resumes at the church, sorry, Ben.
That's funny. Yes. Hey, we're open. We've got two particularly some ladies that I'm asking for resumes. So let me know. Anyway, last question. I'm just thinking about a lot of our listeners are not single. They're in the young children stage like us. Anything that you think we all together, because we are in a similar place, need to be thinking through as parents with children who are coming up to prepare them to be proactive now, because you talked about it was normal for parents to help their children in this. Is there anything you can think of that we should be thinking about if you're like, I'm not single, maybe you don't even have single friends, whatever, but a lot of us have kids.
Yeah.
How can we be thinking about this for our kids, making this easier for them?
Well, maybe this is particular to Utah, I don't know, but like, it's not easy for me to go to Moscow. It wasn't easy for me to go to Kentucky. But these trips I do treat as, but I am making connections for my kids for their future. That is why. That is why I'm okay not sitting through any of the teachings at Moscow. That is why I'm okay being tired on the road.
She means because it's difficult with children, not because...
Correct.
Yeah.
No, correct. So, but I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to do anything, but I just know that they have to have more connections to Christians outside of Utah just because there's not a lot here. We obviously want this to be a place that has a gravitational pull for Christian culture, and we're trying to build that. But I also have to be realistic about the fact that I want them to have other opportunities too, if that's how God would provide for them to have a spouse. So I think sometimes, I don't know, I think moms too need to get outside of their comfort zone to figure out, like, do you have a child that is more outgoing and that wants to have parties all the time and that won't stop talking about their birthdays?
Oh boy.
Like that.
We speak from experience.
You just have to you need to let that sanctify you as a mom, because that's probably really going to play into what their spouse is like, what, you know, all of that stuff. So secondarily, just like it's okay to, your children are going to like people.
Yeah. Like them.
Yes. And that should be good. And we should be using that as an opportunity to then train them. We don't want to shame them about people they like, but even little kids, like, you can very easily direct their character building and say, okay, well, this is how, if you like her, this is how you treat a young girl. And
like
you don't say like, oh, yuck, no, don't do
squash
that.
it.
No,
and we have it in our home already.
No.
we have little boys who like little girls at St. Brennan's Classical Christian Academy. And we don't squash them.
Yeah.
We want to tell them,
yeah,
that's good it's good that you notice God made you that way, and you should notice. And that means that you're on your way to being a godly man. Now here's what you need to do, son.
Correct. Yeah. So
here's what you need to do. And sometimes, I mean, I don't mean this in like a cheesy or shameful way, but like, you know, Miss, and then what's her name that they're into that, you know, that year at school, she won't like it if you are rude at the table. Little girls like polite boys at the table. And it's powerful. It's a powerful motivator and shaper of culture. You have to go with the grain of God's created world, and living with the grain of God's created world means recognizing that one of the civilizing culture building forces God built in the world was sexual attraction and the desire for marriage. Like this is absolutely one of the things God intended to build his world.
So one of the things I was going to say is, if you have a 19, 20-year-old son or daughter who just is not interested in marriage, I would tell them you need to get interested in it, because the go with the flow right now is wait until you're 35 and then maybe start thinking about it and then have a hard time.
Eggs.
Yeah.
Man, don't do that.
That is something that I have learned through my single friends is somebody should have been saying to them, you need to have an eye to this, and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, in their early 20s.
So if your children, like, I'm not saying tell them, look, you need to be, thinking of the Mormons, you need to be married by the time you're 22, you know, all that stuff. But just like, you should be wary if it's not on their radar at all, is what I'm saying.
Why?
Yeah, why? Have those conversations.
I think that's great counsel. As our kids grow up, we need to make sure that we are doing the work ourselves to cultivate relationship and build an environment for them where it's likely. For some of you, I know this is going to be hard to hear. For some of you, this might mean moving from where you are.
Yeah.
Maybe your kids are under 10 now and you're like, this is far away. It's tomorrow. Okay, it is tomorrow that they're going to be preparing for marriage, and you're going to be asking, are there spouses here?
Yeah.
If you're 2-3 hours from the nearest, even close to solid church, if you are, there's absolutely no community whatsoever in your area, and you may say, well, I have some roots here. I've been here for a long time. Like I'm just telling you, you might need to think now about relocating. And I know that's hard, and it's not I'm not giving you blanket advice for everybody.
No.
You need to take that slowly. That's a serious conversation. But don't think you're crazy if you're going, maybe we need to move and establish roots somewhere now, so that in the next 10 years, we will be involved in a community. We'll have those thick relationships that can blossom into intermarriage between families and that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, again, thinking of the Jane Austen stories, when some of those ladies, it was like, well, there's no spouse in this town, so let me go spend 6 weeks in this town.
They literally went to the next town. And they were like, when's the next ball? Oh, there's a ball coming up.
And obviously that's a certain class in society that had more leisure time and, you know, all of that stuff. But just the principle is there, is what I'm saying.
The principle's fine. Absolutely. It's
yeah.
Like they valued the marriage relationship very highly. They understood that marrying someone was your most important human connection.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So thanks for listening, guys. We hope this was helpful. If you like Bright Hearth, and here we are launching our second year of Bright Hearth, and we hope it continues to be helpful. If you want to continue to make this show possible, and to support the work that we're doing here, and also more broadly at New Christendom Press with our many other endeavors, King's Hall Podcast, Haunted Cosmos, my music. There's lots of things that we've got going on, the Hard Men Podcast. You can become a patron with the link in the description. And not only do you help support this work, which we are very thankful for, we know lots of patrons They simply sign up, not because of any of the benefits that and we hope to benefit them, but also just because they want to see this work continue. And we appreciate you.
I was going to say, people keep asking me about this. For our patrons, I have recorded a couple episodes on home birth labor prep and postpartum, and I'm going to do one on newborn care eventually. So those will be coming out soon, guys.
April, May. We produce a podcast called In the Kitchen. Sometimes it's just Lexi, sometimes it's just me, and often it's both of us talking through, sometimes things related to the episode, sometimes just granular, applicational, normal life things that people have asked us about. Sometimes it's Q&A from patrons that we're answering. Just lots of different topics, a broad range. If you sign up to become a patron of the show, you get access to that podcast, all the back episodes, including the ones that are coming out each week. We put those out every week with the main episode. And also, if you sign up for, I think, Silver Tier and above, we send you a free Feed the Patriarchy mug. There's all kinds of benefits, and it also just helps keep making this show possible. So we really appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for giving us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this podcast. Until next time, we hope that the Lord blesses you and your house. And we'll see you next time on Bright Hearth.